Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Enter the Labyrinth podcast. I am joined once again by Wonderland, and this time BobbyMcWho. And I'm going to throw it over to Bobby to give a little introduction about himself before we jump into the rest of the podcast.
Hey there, I'm Bobby. I am relatively new to the TCG world. Lorcana is the first thing that I've played really competitively. I have a little bit of experience playing Magic, mostly drafts and Commander, but started playing right at release for Lorcana and gone to a few 1Ks, 2Ks, a couple top finishes, and some local ones. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
All right, so over the weekend, it was actually a pretty big weekend for Lorcana events. There were two major events in Europe, one in Poznan, Poland, which I know a bunch of content creators actually played in, but unfortunately, they haven't released the full list of decks for that event. But we do have deck lists for the 290-person French tournament, and I don't know, I didn't see anything that was super shocking in terms of like new ideas there, but I think the thing that stands out to me is that in the top 16 there were exactly zero Sapphire decks, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think I definitely would have expected to see some blue steel and red blue up there for sure. I think some of the other tournaments we've seen recently, those have been very good performances from those lists. So to see nothing like that in this is surprising.
Yeah. I look at the list of decks that made it, and it's like a bunch of Ruby Amethyst, a few Amber Steel decks, a couple Purple Steel decks of varying flavors, and some Green Steel discard. It feels like a metagame, at least at the top tables, that should have been um, very favorable for something like Blue Steel. So yeah, to see none of it is kind of surprising.
Some very good benches, possibly. I mean, very key, knocking people out. Like that's you have that game plan when you play these like steel based decks, and it's like, may we kill the fishbone quills, may our Ursulas hit the whole new worlds, and if it works out, it works out.
That's
Yeah,
true.
we did have 9 of the top 16 with some sort of steel pairing. I didn't look at all of them, but I would assume that most of those are running some sort of Benja. So it does help against blue, but a lot of times if they've got at least one ramp out to start, they've got a nice little lead to build off on.
Yeah, I think that is a good point that bench is becoming much more popular. I know even the green steel decks at this point are often playing two or three benches, and I've seen amber steel go as high as the full four benches. So item hate really is out there, um, which I guess that's maybe a good transition to one of the other topics we were planning to talk about, which is Pride Lands in Amber Steel. So I know last week we talked about Pride Lands briefly in that I had played against Zan in the TheaBeasty event, who was playing Pride Lands, and he has since done really well on the Pixelborn ladder with it, and then posted it to Twitter, and now it's definitely picking up some steam. I'm seeing it a lot on Pixelborn, and that is a card that's like kind of like a lantern that dodges all of this item hate that's out there.
I was quite surprised with it. I had quite a few people on the 20 lore Discord like ping at me, asking me questions about it, and I was like, sure, I'll try it on stream. I'm sure it's just another flute card that I'm just gonna find a little too like one tricky and not be happy with. And sometimes it can be that way, and that's what it looked like when you played against it, I assume, where it just like didn't do much and they lost, right? But that's the tricky thing that us Amber Steel players know is like when it loses, it looks so bad. you just get stomped and it's just like, what is this? Like, but then when you win with it, it's absurd. And I had games that it like felt like a souped up lantern and a flute when I needed it. It was more consistent and less consistent at the same time as flute in different ways. I was kind of happy with it, honestly, more than I
I,
expected by far.
I think there are a lot of times. So I've played a little bit of it on ladder just to test it out, and I think there are a lot of times where I really wish that it was just a lantern. I've never really been big on the flute lists, but there have also been times where just giving something that extra 2 health has been significant. Um, but I think we saw in this France tournament of the 4 4 Amber Steel players. 2 of them were on Lantern, 1 was on Flutes, and 1 was on Pride Lands. So I think the Pride Lands is really, like we were saying, just a flex to get around all the Benja hate lately. Whether or not it's worth those 4 uninkable slots, I think, we'll see as we continue on with, this being exposed to the meta. More and more people are going to try it. We'll see if it keeps topping events or if it just kind of fizzles out.
One other thing about it is it feels like set 1 in the regards of how powerful Rapunzel feels again in that version of the deck. Because a lot of the newer versions of Amber Steel have these 2 butts and 3 butts, so they kind of die whenever you attack with them. You don't really get a stack damage on something, which is like why some people like Smee so much. They're like, over 2 turns, it'll get 2 damage, and I can draw cards. And like, I find myself shooting my own characters with Storm and Rage to draw cards with Rapunzel more often than I like get the ability to just swing into something and draw. But the Pride Lands, I found myself way more often being able to like max draw off Rapunzel, and I was like, this feels great. Like, the first thing I wanted to do to the Zan's list I tested out was jam a 4th Rapunzel in, and then the next day I find out that he had 2 lists and his other list had 4 Rapunzels, and it's like, makes perfect sense.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but I've played against it. I was doing some practice with Steel Song just to see if that was a deck I might consider for the weekend, and I was playing Flutes, and I ran into a few different players, including Zan himself, playing the Pride Lands deck on Pixelborn ladder, and it definitely felt like the Pride Lands was better than Flutes in the mirror, because their Benjas can hit your Flutes and your Benjas cannot hit their Pride Lands. So it's it's kind of brutal in the mirror in that sense. And so I don't know, like, part of it makes me just not want to play Amber Steel because I don't really want to play Pride Lands. The feeling of getting your Pride Lands hit by something like a Maui or like a Fox.
It only costs 2. It costs 2.
Yeah, but like, it costs a card.
Maui killing a 2-drop. Like, what 2-drop doesn't die to Maui?
It's true, but it's the fact that it's uninkable is kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
Fair.
So we'll see. But I guess I'm curious then, since you guys have both played it, if you had to play Steel Song this weekend, which 2-drop would you play? Lantern, Pride Lands, or Flute?
That's tough. I mean, I would probably automatically just do Lantern because I haven't played enough games with Pride Lands. But I'm going to play more games with Pride Lands. And there's like a 80% chance that I swap over to Pride Lands because, as we said earlier, there's a million Benjas out there, and it's frustrating. It's a lot easier to play around a 5-drop than a 3-drop when it destroys your item. Benja's very good.
I do think the Pride Lands and some of the other Amber Steel lists as well, but they're getting really greedy with a lot of lists running less Grab Your Sword. Because those decks just go super wide with the 2/2 1-drops after a wheel, and if you don't have swords, which if you're only running, some lists are running 1 or 2 these days. You're only running 1 or 2, and you just so happen to get your first one wheeled away, then you don't get a second one. They're going wide, and they're just going to start slamming into you. If I had to play an Amber Steel list this weekend, I probably would play Pride Lands just because of all the Benja hate. But I also might just choose something else to put in that slot, whether I just up my swords count or something else. I don't think there's like necessarily a wrong answer there.
I think Wochuk has been on a Lantern list, Flute list. Like it's like Smee basically. He ran Smee over that in that slot, and he's been doing well with that. I lost to him a few times, but there was once that he like grinded me out, and then I was playing Action Jacks and got him out of cards, and he's like, "Ooh, whole new world off the top." It's like, yep, that's the power of Amber Steel is like whole new world, and you're still in it.
You talked about it a little bit earlier as well, but Smee's a prime target for Rapunzel. Even if you're only drawing 2 off of her, maybe then you don't have to cast a wheel on a ramping blue steel or blue red deck. And you can, keep in the game with those extra 2 cards. That Smee also helps you go underneath of those decks a little bit as well. That 2 lore on a 3/3 body is pretty strong.
Yeah, I
It's in,
do I do like Smee as like a failsafe for Rapunzel. I feel like if you play some copies of Smee, it's easier to go up to 3 or 4 Rapunzels in your deck, just knowing that, you can always ink them, but also it's like not unreasonably likely for you to be able to get just one card on your own by playing a turn 2 Smee and then questing with it on turn 3. But
another card that plays quite well with Pride Lands, and it's in the Pride Lands version as well.
yeah, I haven't tried it. I would like to try it. I don't know if I'm gonna have time. I've got a lot of
You're like, it's a joke. I'm not trying it.
I mean, I think that to some extent, I think like the Pride Land Stitch combo stuff is a bit of a joke. Like
I want to try that, but it's not in the version I tried.
if you're playing like 8 Simbas and no late game, so you can have like mono ones and twos to do the Stitch combo. I do kind of think that's a joke. I've never seen it be good. I've seen people get the combo off, but those people usually lose like 5 games and then they quit when they do it once and post the video or switch to a different deck on stream or whatever they're doing. It's usually for content, but yeah, I'm not convinced by the like all in combo stuff. But I think playing Pride Lands is as a replacement for your Lantern or your Flute, your uninkable 2-drop that Amber for whatever reason seems to have an abundance of. Seems like a reasonable choice at this point. Any skepticism I had is kind of like gone. I just don't know what the best card to play is.
Yeah, I was quite surprised when I was shipped the list and the only thing that turned on Pride Lands was the Benja. I'm just like, this seems wrong. But then, I played a few games with it and I was like, wow, it's so good with Rapunzel. It does this in so many ways, more ways than I expected. It's definitely been an overperformer in the locations. Like, I thought it was just going to be Castle was going to be the only location I actually care about. And maybe McDuck Manor. But I think Pride Lands is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, Pride Lands has the magic number, which is 7, I suppose. 6 is, I think, at this point not enough life for a location. It feels just always dying to Scar and Maui, and it's not good enough. But yeah, I don't know. Pride Lands is interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens this weekend. I bet we'll see more of it. That's kind of my thought. Speaking of which, so the upcoming weekend there is another big online TheaBeasty event, which is going to be a 10K. So this is going to be, I believe, the largest ever prize pool for a Lorcana tournament, and they're hoping to break the record again for largest tournament ever, which would be super cool. So if you have not signed up, I guess I'll put a link in the description. Go sign up for the TheaBeasty 10K. It's going to be awesome. I think we're all going to be playing this weekend, as well as some other members of the team. And I think it's probably going to be the most competitive tournament ever. Just looking at the names of people already registered, it's going to be... there's a lot of big names in the community, and some big names from other communities I've seen that are going to be joining us too, which is super cool.
That weren't playing before?
Yeah, I saw Brad Nelson's name, which I know he's sort of casually picked up Lorcana at this point, so that's what stood out to me. I don't know how much Lorcana he has played, but I haven't seen his name in top 8 lists or anything like that. So I'm guessing not a ton, because if he was playing a lot, he'd probably be...
Yep. You would see that name if he was playing.
Like, that would be my thought.
Right?
So yeah, but Brennan, who's obviously 1-2, is going to play again, and I would expect a lot of the people that have top 8 previous TheaBeasty events to be playing this next 10K, because it's hard to resist, especially now that it's not on a holiday weekend.
It had great numbers for being on Easter weekend.
True. But this one, maybe more.
Hopefully more. We need to cap this out so that they are enticed to run more of these large events.
A
little bit higher.
150-ish currently. As of time of recording, it's about 150 people registered. But I know last time, like, half the people who played registered in like the 4 hours before the event. So it's people like to wait to register, which kind of makes sense. Like, if you're not sure you're going to be free, you don't want to commit to paying the entry fee and then not show up. But yeah, I agree that we want to, make sure that they do well, the TOs get as many people as they expect so that they can keep hosting these. And if you're not sure, like if you haven't played an online event before, um, I strongly encourage trying. This is, especially like before set championships, probably your best opportunity to get good high quality practice against, actually top level players. Going to locals is great, but the competition in these online events is, we'll say, a few levels above that. So it can be intimidating, but also it's, if you ever want to get better, it's kind of the best way to do it. So as far as the tournament this weekend, do any of you have any idea what you plan to play?
I really want to just comfort back to Purple Steel, but it has not been consistent for me. And I haven't tried out the aggro lists enough to really feel comfortable running those either. I've got a lot of reps to put in over the next few days to really kind of iron out what I want to do. I don't really have a comfort deck this set. Purple Steel was able to get me placed this set too, but it just hasn't been consistent the last few times I've played it in an event.
If only Jafar was the truth.
It's close. I swear it's close.
Jafar Wheel won a 2K in Toledo this past weekend.
True, yeah. Shout out to whoever had the guts to bring Jafar Wheel to what I assume was a meta that had enough Sapphire that I'd be scared to play it, but
yeah, I brought Jafar Wheel to the last TIA event that I was able to play in. It's not the Easter one, but the one prior. And I got matched into Red Blue rounds 2, 3, and 4. And I just could not do anything. I won 3 and dropped. It was a very, very poor experience, and I just swore off Jafar Wheel after that. It was not fun.
Yeah, that was the last time it was good to be able to play red purple aggro, which I would love to play this weekend, but there's so much steel. Like I want to play aggro, but you just can't. Like I can beat blue steel sometimes, but amber steel, ooh. Even with cutting back on swords and Tinkerbells, they still just like Cindy Storm you.
Yeah, I was gonna say one Cinderella in play, it's just an absolute nightmare. You can't do anything anymore.
And then if they shift on that Cinderella, nothing lives.
Yeah, so you're off Jafar Wheel. What decks are you considering, Bobby?
Top of list right now, probably something steel, probably between amber steel, green steel, or blue steel. I have played a lot of blue steel between set 2 and set 3. I've probably got over 300 games on it on Pixelborn. But it's a little bit more long and grindy than I like to play consistently, so I kind of stopped playing it as much. I do want to try green steel again. I really liked it at the beginning of the set. It fell off a little bit when when blue steel and blue red got really popular, but people are still seeing success with it in the meta, so maybe I need to try it out again.
It's a lot different. Like the popular versions, like playing with merfolk and whatnot. It like the original version, it's very meta dependent. Like so the original one fought what the expected meta was, and like a lot of people had good success with it. And then the meta adjusted, and then its game plan against blue steel just doesn't always work out very well, and so they got crushed by it. But the new aggro version kind of like goes under it enough, and with people cutting swords, like Bucky's and John's look a lot better.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot less Bucky in these versions. I think a lot of them are running the Flynn's and the 2-drop Ursulas, and yeah, like you said, we see Prince John more, and we see the 3-drop Ursula, of course, in those lists. Except for, which list were we looking at? Was it a
not all of them?
Look? Yeah,
I think
well,
yeah, the France tournament, the like second place deck had no 3-drop Ursula, and was playing like the Bucky Prince John like dedicated set 2 discards sort of game plan, which apparently that can still work. I don't know about for improvise is maybe not where I would want to be at this point. I don't think we don't need the air, but
it was their homage to Zero Skater, who kind of pioneered this sort of list in set 2. It looks so familiar from what people saw in set 2. I'm sure it's still good into red purple as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
But that was kind of the whole reasoning for Zero just taking that ladder, Pixelborn ladder on a tear with green steel, because there was just so much red purple all the time. But yeah, I do think the Bucky versions are a little bit slower, and if you don't get the Floodborns out, you're not pumping the discard, and that's kind of the whole point of a discard deck, right?
The improvises help at killing Cogsworth. It's a crazy thing, but
I suppose
it's the only reason I beat Cogsworth with Action Jackson is just like improvise. Like, Ursula, please finish the job. But like, that's the surprise factor for like maybe a game or two. But if they start playing around improvise, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to play that in green steel like discard.
Yeah, but I do think it's a deck that clearly has a ton of options. Like, based on what the meta is, you can play the Bucky plan, you can play the Prince John plan, you can do a more aggressive version with Flynn Rider, with Christian Merfolk like we're seeing now, but, you could go a more dedicated Bloodborne version if you wanted to. I just like, it's an interesting deck that has a ton of options. It feels kind of like Ruby Amethyst in a way, where there's a lot of room to tune the deck. Whereas, I've been playing a lot of Ruby Sapphire. There's really very little you can do to tune that deck. Like, you're kind of just playing the 60 cards that go in it, and there's like 4 cards you could consider outside of those, and that's it.
You can change 1 or 2 numbers with a card that basically does the same thing, but just a very slightly different. And even then, like, it doesn't even do much.
So I think it's cool for green steel.
I mean, you should put Heart of Tefiti in Sapphire Ruby.
I've been working with Heart of Tefiti in part just because it's so good against the other Sapphire decks. When I'd first built my list, I just wanted to go with something really basic. Didn't want to tech that hard. Didn't feel like I needed the advantage in the mirror. Although it is annoying to play against a Ruby Sapphire player who's playing Heart of Tefiti and you're not, because card is kind of broken there. Just draws a card every single turn. But yes, so if I were playing Ruby Sapphire this weekend, and it is a deck I'm considering, I would play 1 or 2 Heart of Tefiti for sure. But I still don't know what I'm going to play. I think I'm between Ruby Sapphire, Blue Steel, and probably Green Steel at this point. I just don't want to play Pride Lands, so I need to find reasons to not like take decks off my options, otherwise I get, analysis paralysis trying to decide what deck to play. I don't want to play Pride Lands. This may be a good enough reason not to play Steel Song this weekend.
Do you want to play a more aggressive green steel or more mid-range green steel?
Well, I'll probably start with the I guess the team deck. I don't know if you want to call it that, but Lorcana Bro, Aaron Rubin had built a list that Zenulist then used to win the Michi Mondays this week. So when I start testing, I'll probably start with that exact list and then go from there.
I loved that meme that they posted on Twitter where it's just like Xenelos up there like, yeah, I got first, and then Lorcana Bro in the background in 4th place looking sad. Like,
yeah, well, what are you going to do? So I think that deck might be good. I've historically had some a lack of success with green steel, but I can probably figure it out. I believe in myself. So
you teased R&B, I do believe, quite a bit about
I know.
playing green steel.
I know, and you know what? I will lose some amount of my dignity if I choose to register Prince John. I'm willing to admit that, okay? Some of your humanity, like, just sort of leaves your body when you register Prince John for a tournament.
That's a reason to take green steel off the list of decks to play, I guess. He's back on Blue Ruby.
Well, if it wins enough, then I'll play anything. Let's put it that way.
These events are 2-game format, so that also could be, something to consider. You've got a deck that can high roll like Amber Steel, and you just happen to high roll both games, then 3 points versus 1 is pretty strong.
True. Yeah, I forgot. I actually wasn't even aware what format we were playing, if we were going back to 3 games or 2-game formats. So it's definitely 2 games.
Last I heard.
All right.
Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but last I heard it's still 2-game format to prepare for the challenges. So
comment your complaints about Bobby down below, and
I don't mind. If we're gonna play the most important tournament ever in Lorcana in 2-game format, I don't mind getting some more practice in it, even if people have qualms with the way it plays out or the way it feels. If you want to get practice, you want to understand like how important is it to be able to win on the draw. I think the best way to figure that out, of like what sorts of records you're going to need to make top cut. I think it's just nice to get some reps, see how these things play out.
Yeah, I know Artifacts had mentioned in comments about the last video that he thought that the best of 2, he liked it. He did well as well, so grain of salt there, but like I'm assuming he's a good enough player to be able to like take a bias away, like not be biased in his opinion. I'm like, I kind of did well. You did well. You liked it, don't like it, impartial?
I was pretty indifferent. It's we talked about it last week. It feels a little weird to not finish a match, but I guess like I already feel like I'm grinding for 8 hours for points. Making it like an explicit 8-hour grind for points doesn't really bother me too much. I don't really care.
So your opinion really hasn't changed since last week?
I played only the one event with 2 games, so it's hard to.
You've had more time to reflect.
Yeah, haven't done it though.
I like the intent of both people getting to go first, but the extra point does seem like a bit much when you go 2-0 in one and then 0-2 in the next one, and you have more points than the person that went 1-1 and 1-1.
Yeah, and I know like one thing Artifacts brought up when he was saying that he liked the 2-game format is that when you win 2-0, like you had to win one of your games on the draw, which like that is something. Like I could see why they would want to reward that, because it is difficult, right? If you go 1-1, presumably, not always, but presumably you won the game where you went first and lost the game where you went second. So I could see why they would think going 2-0 would be worth an extra point, but it invites issues, and I just don't like. Now you're not really getting punished as much for going 0-2, and you're getting super rewarded for potentially just getting very lucky. Like maybe the reason you won on the draw is because your opponent did nothing and rolled over and died,
Yeah.
Someone drew their full hand of Medusas and Tremaines.
Oh, I've been there. I've definitely been there. I've definitely had all 4 Be Prepareds in an opening hand before. That's always a fun one.
Yeah, I started a hand earlier with 3 Pride Lands. That was a bit rough.
They're so good in multiples. So good.
In the mid game, they probably are. Just not in your opener.
He's just like not mentioning like the Queen shift, like whole new world with them in play or something like that. Maybe it was good.
No, it was bad. It was very bad.
Sometimes it works out, just not that time.
All right. Well, looks like we've got. Well, I guess we didn't really talk about what you're going to play this weekend, Wonderland. Have you figured out what decks you're considering?
Oh man, obviously Action Jackson is not going to be the deck I play. I wish I could. I really wish I could play it.
Okay, well let's talk about Action Jackson, since I'm guessing most listeners have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, if they watch my stream, they've probably seen me play it, but it's just an airfoil deck that also has like the discard package with Ursula. The Ursula already, like both Ursulas, obviously. The 3-drop Ursula works very well with airfoil because just singing with her gives you the 2 actions needed to draw a card off of airfoil. And then so the thought process is you just draw a bunch of cards against the grindy matchups and you deal with all the removal and you just outvalue them. And then against the aggro matchups, most of your actions deal damage to characters. So you just shoot them all down and then try to draw cards to refill more removal and shoot them all down and hope that they don't reach that critical 16 lore before you stabilize and they're out of cards and you have 10 cards before you can do anything. and like Pete's in there. It's a weird deck. Like you look at it on paper and you're like, what small child built this deck to play in their locals event? And they're just like, oh, it was Vonderland built this deck. So like obviously it's terrible. But it's so fun.
I think I played 3 games on it. Could not figure out what the proper mulligan was for it and deleted it off of my deck list.
You mulligan for 3-drop Ursula and 2-drop Ursula almost all the time, and then you mull away some. Like you don't want to keep the Pete's or some other things that you want to draw in the late game, so you don't want to ink them early. You kind of just do a lot of matchups. You just do the discard package for, and then like the airfoil is just there to maintain the velocity of card advantage, because sometimes when you're like making him discard a bunch of cards, you don't have the John, so like you can't maintain cards. Well, the tailspin is like another version, or the tailspin, the airfoil is another version of John, just card advantage in general. If you like drawing cards, it's the deck for you. Like, and you don't want to play Flavor Sham.
I was gonna say there's a number of decks that draw a lot of cards that don't require you to play airfoil currently. But
Dude,
so
I outdraw Flavor Shams with this deck. You draw like 6 or 7 cards a turn sometimes, like 3 or 4 turns in a row.
oof.
You almost deck, like especially against red purple. If you don't discard the B preps and they're just top decking them, like all 4 of them, like you might deck yourself before you can kill them, but just don't overextend.
So you don't think it's like a top tier deck? It's probably not even tier 2. How, I guess.
Oh, it's definitely tier 2. I
So?
beat Blue Steel 3 times at a local 0.75k, and like I killed Cogsworth. I killed like 5 or 6 Cogsworths. And one of the games against Blue Steel, they were at 19 lore and I was at 0. And I faded like 2 draw steps of them, just like they drew like a blank or like a character that wasn't a Cogsworth. Like a Cogsworth or like Lucky Dime, then a character, I would have lost. But I had like all the cards, so I could kill any character they played as long as it wasn't just like warded, basically. And I played 2 Pete's and I turned them sideways like 2 turns in a row with like one other character, and that's like 16 lore just on the Pete's 2 turns in a row, and I just got lucky in that manner. And they might have made some mistakes. I probably made mistakes. It can't win. I also lost to red purple in the top 8, which I feel is like it's one of its best matchups. So like, sometimes the deck just loses to itself. Sometimes they have a great draw, but it's not reliable enough yet. Like, I think it's just missing 1 or 2 small things that just might not even be imprinted yet. But like next set, I think it's like airfoil might be something to pay attention to, especially because Ursula's busted, right?
All right, so we had an interesting idea come to us about a topic we could talk about on the podcast, and that is tournament etiquette. So I guess generally, how should you comport yourself at a tournament? I guess both, relatively casual and competitive. Any thoughts?
The bare minimum hygiene,
Yes.
please. Like,
it is a
hygiene,
problem,
folks.
Like,
Wash
especially
your hands.
especially at like a big convention center. If you're going to Atlanta, I mean, you just take a shower, put on deodorant. I just, full stop. I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't care who you are. Like, the people who smell bad, and they're always there, unfortunately, are usually not aware, and it makes the experience worse for everyone. I wish,
I don't know how.
in my experience, the more competitive events tend to have less of this problem than the more casual events. I'm not sure why that is, but
Still does, but
yeah. So yes, please, for the love of God, wear some antiperspirant deodorant. Take a shower. Don't, just because you can't smell yourself doesn't mean no one else can smell you. That's my best advice on that.
You can smell yourself,
Like-
just even a little bit. Usually everybody's got a lot more.
Yeah, that is very true.
like I pack a deodorant stick for these big conventions. I'm probably gonna have 1 or 2 extra t-shirts like in my bag. Like it can get really hot, especially if you go outside to sit on the balcony to relax between rounds. Like it's gonna be pretty hot in Georgia right now, I assume. It was the last time I was there, and like just be prepared. Like who knows what can happen. Don't be a jerk. Yeah, that's probably a really big one.
Yes. It applies to all things in life, but Lorcana too. Don't be an ass. Try to be nice, and sometimes you have to be an advocate for yourself, right? Like if there's a dispute about a ruling or something that happened in the game, obviously, don't roll over and let yourself get rules lawyered, or don't let your opponent angle shoot you. Call a judge, but try to be nice about it. Don't try to sling insults and make personal
We'll see what this
attacks.
judge has to say about
Well,
it.
I mean, like especially at a competitive event, right? If we're all going to Atlanta, sometimes people are going to be emotional. Like tensions are going to run high. It's going to be the most competitive event we've had in the game so far. There will probably be an outburst or two. Let's not let it be you. And the judges probably aren't going to have patience for that stuff, right? Like if you're throwing a tantrum and being unsportsmanlike and making a disruption, like they will maybe warn you, but you'll be thrown out in short order, I imagine.
Yeah, and if things do get a little bit heated, and hopefully they don't get to an extent where you're getting kicked out, but like in between games, take a second, talk with the person across the table from you. Be like, I'm not trying to be combative. I just want this to be good games. I had that happen to me. So I don't have a ton of competitive, experience, and I had gone to a couple 1Ks either October or November of last year, so a couple months after the game came out. Those were the first sort of like really competitive events I went to. There were a couple games where like me and the person across from me, there was a lot of tension there because of like a judge call usually, because somebody misunderstood a rule. And like after that judge leaves, things are not like just resolved because the judge said so, right? You've got 2 people there who are now playing on a kind of different plane because just they're elevated, and so you can take a second in between games, especially to kind of maybe lower that. I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky to navigate, and at the very least, like if there is a debate about something, a question about something, like don't try to hash it out with your opponent. Just like, I mean, I guess it depends how minor it is, but if there's like a serious question about a ruling or something, like just immediately call a judge. Don't waste time trying to convince your opponent that the rule is this or that. That's not your job. They shouldn't be believing you anyway, and you shouldn't be believing them. So just call a judge. That's what they're there for. And if someone calls a judge on you in a game, like try not to take it personally. They're just trying to have the game play out fairly, correctly, and it really is best for everyone. But yeah, I understand that certainly it can be awkward, or especially if you're not used to it, if you haven't had a lot of experience from other TCGs or something like that, it can be tough. I know actually recently in Lorcana, I was accused of cheating, which I did not do, but my opponent accused me of cheating, and it's like, it took me a while to like get back into my game. So I guess, another piece of advice for you is like, if there is some sort of form of conflict between you and your opponent, try to not let it affect you. Like take a deep breath. Like you can only control you and what you're doing. And if your opponent is upset or angry or whatever, no, it's not necessarily, your fault. There's nothing you can do about it. You just kind of got to behave yourself and play your game.
I was just gonna say, we don't know if any of these games are going to be streamed or anything, right? If there's going to be any sort of Disney Lorcana Ravensburg, I think is how they say that.
They have their own Twitch channel, so it could.
Those were the ones where I found myself a little bit off my game the most. I played down at Apex, and they had a fairly good streaming setup, for their top tables. They do a lot of Magic events, and being in those featured matches just is like a whole nother layer of things to add on to an already stressful situation.
Yep. It's just one of those things that you just gotta be there and do it, and then it's going to be super stressful the first time, the second time, the third time, and then like you won't even realize. Like it just can. Hopefully, I mean, maybe it'll always bother you, Bobby. It'll haunt your dreams forever. But like you do get used to that kind of thing, and it's the same thing for your first top 8 at like what are the set championships do we have? Like we don't have PTQs yet, right? But
Right.
like for the Magic players, like it's the first time you make a top 8 of any event, really. Like you're gonna get jittery, and eventually that wears off mostly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you do kind of, as far as like nervousness for being on camera or being in a feature match or being in the top cut of a major event, there's kind of no way to, you don't know how you're going to feel until you get there, and it can definitely be nerve-wracking. I don't know. I don't worry about it too much, although maybe, I have a YouTube channel where my misplays are already visible for the world to see, so I guess I don't know, how much worse can it get? You've already got like a video of me screwing up that you can replay over and over if you want to, so.
Yeah, hopefully there's no nerves from the streaming like kicking in. But
I mean, if I make like, I don't know, top cut, I'm sure I will have nerves at Atlanta. But they will go away probably after like I shuffle up and get into the game 1. I'm usually pretty good with that, unless something weird happens. Like, if you fail a deck check, which has never happened to me, but I feel like that's the sort of thing that would probably like really throw me off.
The mysterious missing a card, or just like writing the wrong one down, especially with like there's so many Ursulas, right? There's an Ursula Deceiver, of all. Like, what if you just like wrote the wrong one down? With different cards, it becomes easier. I know I've accidentally cut the Surfers from a deck trying to cut the 1-drop mini. It's like, whoops.
Yeah, it's actually funny because having registered, on paper Magic decks and Lorcana decks, the first time I registered a Lorcana deck for a tournament on a paper registration sheet was kind of a shock. You do have to write the whole name of the card, including the subtitle, which gets really long sometimes. It's kind of annoying.
I remember one of my first top 8s from Magic, I just wrote like Urbog on it, and like that's not its full name. I didn't get in trouble or anything, but like later when they uploaded the deck list, it linked to the wrong card, some like Legends card instead of the one that turns everything into a swamp. It's like weird clerical errors like that can happen, and like it can punish you if caught, and it's unfortunate, but it could be hopefully just a warning. I don't know how do they say in the rules how that's affected yet? Have they gone that deep into the rule drop?
I'm not sure. I'm not one of the people who's read the comp rules, and I know that they have separate tournament rules from like, because I think the comp rules are just like the game rules, and then usually I know Magic has like separate tournament competitive rules, and I'm guessing Lorcana is the same, but I'm not 100% familiar with like how all that stuff's handled.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in the competitive rules yet. I know that they're supposed to be updating them before the challenges, but I guess we'll see what that really entails.
Just be careful. I mean, if you're registering a deck, just double check it. Have your friend check your list. It's a dumb way to like lose a game or a match because you wrote the wrong card or the wrong number. Don't let it happen. You should feel confident when you get deck checked that it's not going to be a problem.
I know I'll be using, I think Mishi, their website has like a link where you can fill out a deck list and then just print it out, and I'm definitely probably doing that. I might have to like Sharpie out one and like handwrite a single card in like the day of or something like that, but it's going to start with a printed out one for sure.
That's a good idea. I'm usually not that responsible or prepared, but that's what a smart person would do probably.
Dreamborn.inc also has a registration sheet option you can click on and download a PDF.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah, that's good. Hopefully they allow us to use these tools and don't have some proprietary deck list that we're required to use for some reason, which wouldn't surprise me, but I guess
Melee.gg will finally support Lorcana decks. We'll have to submit them all for that.
I wouldn't count on it, but maybe. It's funny, I've played in Melee.gg in tournaments, and it's like I just take a picture and upload it as my deck list. It's so funny.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's still kind of awkward. And then I'm like on my cell phone camera trying to get like all my cards visible while everyone's like looking at the exact 60 I'm playing for the tournament around me. Which sucks a little bit when people
up to like block the light so you don't get the glare on the sleeves.
Well, yeah, but like it's one thing if like no one knows who you are, but when I'm at like a random tournament, like half the room, if it's a serious competitive tournament, like often knows who I am. So like they're like, "What's he playing?" Just funny.
Oh, the woes of being famous and well known and respected within a community. Like, what's it like, Bannable?
Famous, I'm not so sure. Respected, I'm not so sure. Well known, moderately, we'll go with.
I mean, it is a really awesome feeling, like meeting a fan. I don't know if you've had that opportunity yet, Bobby. Obviously, Bannable has, based on what he's talking. Like, someone who watches my stream, hi, Rageless. Raging old man, I do believe. Rageless. I'm such a jerk. But like I saw him at the local event I was at recently, and that's always cool.
Yeah, definitely not something that I've really had the experience with yet. I think it'll be a little bit weird and surreal. I'm also like fairly awkward in person, so it's gonna take some getting used to, meeting some of these people and remembering names, especially. I'm one of those people that takes 3 times of meeting someone before I actually will remember their name. And the whole associating like online personas with real names and like what do I call you in person as well is an
rough.
awkward thing to manage.
Yeah, I'm fine with Wonderland or Wonder. Like my friends all call me. Like I've been using Wonder as a gamer tag forever and on Discord. So like I guess I'm used to that. I'm a millennial Xbox player. So like it's been years of it. I just assumed that you were named Bannable for the longest time, but no.
No. The name is it's Hannibal Barca, the famous Carthaginian general who marched elephants through the Alps and laid waste to the Italian countryside in the Second Punic War. Something everyone knows about. And then I just switched the first letters of his names, Hannibal Barca, to Bannable Harca. So if you didn't know where my name came from, that's where it came from. But it's it sounds funny. Like people call me Bannable. I'm like, man, I do have a really stupid name.
I liked it, but
it's so funny. I feel like everyone cringes at like their screen name gamer tag stuff some amount of the time.
I mean, you can only hear Vonderland so many times, but it's like I like it now. I hated it for a bit, liked it, hated it, liked it. I'm on a positive vibe at the moment for it.
Mine's just mostly my name, so
that's how honestly,
bad.
A genius strategy, frankly. No one's confused. You don't have to go by a weird tag. You don't have the awkwardness like, oh, what should I call him? Like, it's probably just Bobby in this case.
Yep. Anybody can call me Bobby. I'll answer that. I'll answer to Bob. Robert, if you
I like to call him McWho. I don't think I've ever called you that. But
I don't think anyone's ever called me that.
All right. Well, as far as like other tournament etiquette stuff, I know one thing that can be controversial sometimes, especially at like a serious competitive tournament, is shuffling. And I don't know if Ravensburger has released guidelines as far as things like pile shuffling go, but in general, some people like to pile shuffle between games.
Pile counting.
Yeah, it's not a shuffle, and my personal recommendation would be to just not do it. It doesn't really randomize your deck, doesn't do anything for you. It takes a lot of time for very little benefit. So yeah, I would recommend against pile shuffling. And then there's also this weird debate about other people shuffling your cards. But the reality is that if you're at a serious competitive tournament, say you're going to, well, even set championships at this point, I think people are going to be taking it somewhat seriously. But certainly if you're going to Atlanta or a 1K or bigger event in paper, when your opponent presents your deck, I think you should shuffle it. You can cut it if you want, but I would highly recommend just picking it up, giving it a couple mass shuffles to make sure that it's randomized. That way you never have to wonder, if they did any shenanigans where they put a card they didn't want in their opening hand on the bottom of your deck, and now they're cutting it to the middle of the deck so they know they won't have it in their opener. Like, you just don't have to worry about that if you pick their deck up and shuffle it. There's no shenanigans. And you're allowed to do it. I know some people get a little touchy about their cards, but the reality is the rules say that your opponent is allowed to shuffle your deck.
Yeah, treat the deck like it's a baby that's not yours, right? Like, gentle hands. They do a couple, light shuffles. Don't pick it up, bend all their cards, and riffle shuffle. Told you guys a story before, but I had somebody at locals do that early on when I started playing Lorcana, and it was just clenched insides. Luckily, I didn't have anything expensive in the deck, but he just picks it up, bends all my cards, and riffle shuffles it, and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, no riffle shuffling.
Yeah,
That's so rude to do to someone else's cards. Like, maybe in the 90s you could have done that, but not now.
Yeah. So certainly cut your opponent's deck. Like, at a bare minimum, at a series tournament, you should cut your opponent's deck. But I highly recommend, even if it's just like a couple mass shuffles, pick it up, be nice, be respectful. It's not your property, but you also shouldn't have to wonder whether or not they're cheating. And also, like, if your opponent shuffles your deck, don't be offended. Like, don't take it as an accusation of cheating. They're not accusing you of cheating. They're just saying, I don't want to have to watch you like a hawk just to make sure that you're not cheating me. I'm just going to pick your deck up, shuffle it 2 times so that I know that it's random, or at least, you didn't stack the top or bottom of your deck to get cards you didn't want out of the way, which is a thing that can be done. It's actually not that hard. So that's my warning to you.
Just stare at them dead in the eye as they're shuffling your deck.
I mean, like, if you're playing a Ruby Amethyst deck or a Ruby Sapphire deck and you're playing its blue steel and you want your Be Prepared in the middle of your deck, it is not that difficult to take 1 or 2 and put them on the bottom of your deck as you mass shuffle if you see them, because you can hold your deck in such a way that you could see the bottom card of your deck. You put them there, and then if you know your opponent's going to cut it, the cards get cut to the middle of the deck, and they won't be in your opener. So and then you get to shuffle them back in, after the mulligan. So I think that you shouldn't have to worry about that. You shouldn't let your opponents get away with that sort of thing, and you shouldn't feel like you need to watch them. Just pick their deck up and give it a couple shuffles.
You should definitely, though, watch their eyes while they're shuffling your deck. There's been lots of notorious cheaters by purposely finding bad cards in your deck to give you a bad hand. It's a little harder to do in Lorcana because there's not lands, but they could try to just give you a bunch of unequals, technically. And it's just like common courtesy not to look down at your opponent's deck as you're shuffling it, or shuffle in a manner that only shows you the sleeved part and not the bottom. And if your opponent is shuffling like that, you should ask them politely not to. And if you feel like they're doing it more than once, you can even tell the judge afterwards, like once you warn them, just to be like, hey, as a heads up, here's a small thing. Because if they're not doing it maliciously, it doesn't matter, right? The judge is going to walk by later, see them not doing it, and nothing happens. So you shouldn't feel bad about doing that. And then if the judge walks by later and they're doing it again, well, they could be a dirty cheater, and we need to flush them out.
It's true, yeah. I mean, obviously, there have been a number of notorious things like this that have happened in Magic. I mean, to do it's easier to stack your own deck the bottom because it's reasonable to take 10, 15 shuffles. If your opponent is shuffling your deck 10, 15 times, that raises a red flag for me. Like, maybe watch them closely, because that's maybe excessive at that point. Anything else on tournament etiquette?
We kind of covered a lot, right? We covered hygiene, shuffling politely, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
being courteous, we covered that.
Interpersonal
Not having
conflict to an extent with judge calls and
Yeah.
what comes along
Oh,
with that.
we didn't talk about having appropriate sleeves and playmats.
Yes.
Not having something you would show the boys or whatever you want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
But like, there could be kids around. There could be other adults who just don't want to look at half naked people like on a playmat,
Me
right?
included. I really don't need to see your, anime panty shot playmats. It's just like I
I've
will
seen
judge you personally very negatively if you roll up and, you've got near naked anime girls on your playmat. I'm stunned regularly at how many people think that is an
think they can
appropriate
just do
playmat
it.
to use. I'm like, I just don't.
I think it's something that we will see a specific rule for in the
Yeah.
tournament rules. Star Wars Unlimited had one in there. People were kind of upset by it, and they walked it back a little bit. So originally, when they released their competitive rules, Star Wars Unlimited said only plain playmats or licensed Star Wars playmats for this game.
And I hate that. Hate that.
Yeah. So they got a lot of pushback on that, and they changed it to appropriate playmats, but playmats on any official streams for their events have to be plain or officially licensed.
That's
art
reasonable.
Playmats. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's 100% reasonable. There are obviously potential copyright issues with streaming art that they don't know that they own, or somebody uploaded on a playmat maker, and I think it's completely reasonable. A lot of those top tables should just have built-in playmats anyways, so it's not like you're going to be playing on a plain plastic table or anything like that. Hopefully, at any of these big events. So,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I totally understand not wanting other custom playmats for feature match areas, and I've never played in a feature match area that didn't have a playmat there or some like reasonable surface to play on. Right? It's not always depending on. It hasn't always been a playmat, but it's been like a specific play surface, designed to be played on. So I think that's probably not going to be a problem. Yeah.
Also, don't put your beverages and stuff on the table.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just like
water bottles on
like,
the floor, please. It's not. You can reach it there. Like if there's like a cup holder built into the table or something. I don't know where this would happen, but that's maybe one thing. But it's just put your water bottle on the floor. I have seen in tournament a water bottle get dumped on cards. Don't let it be you, please.
Dude, I handed someone a Wendy's soda in their top 8 match, or like in their winning into the top 8 match, and I expected them to put it on the floor next to him, and he just puts it right next to his thing. Hi, James. I know you're gonna watch this later. I was just like, "How are you doing?" He was unfazed. He didn't spill it. He was on top of it, but I was like, "Man, that would just like tilt me until I put it on the floor."
yeah, my local LGS, I've told a couple of people before, is also a restaurant. So I'm very used to casual, like even food on the table, because we play a lot of like Commander and stuff. So like food on the table, drinks on the table, like everybody's just playing.
Commander.
Yeah, and
it's like the duels right next to like a soda with
Yes.
no lid. Like
it's a guy with like super expensive. I don't know a ton of Magic cards, but I think it's something like Time Twister or something. I don't.
Just casual 7 to a couple grand,
Yeah. Sleeved up. I mean, double sleeved up, but in his CEDH deck, and
it's waterproof, bro.
Might be a little bit more careful with that deck than his precons, but
man, restaurant card shops, that is the future. I hope that happens more and more.
It's a super great place. It's a board game restaurant, so they've got thousands of board games. $5 fee to play the board games. Before, with, or after dinner, or whatever. And then he just opened the LGS part of it within the last year, maybe over a year at this point, and started off doing Magic, and then started doing Lorcana, and then Star Wars as well. So it's a pretty fun place to play.
But the food, how's the food?
Excellent. Everything's made in house. Like they smoke their meats and for their sandwiches and stuff.
Nice.
Dude, I'm so jelly right now. I like my LGS, but they don't have smoked meats. I mean, like, not
Most
very
don't.
many LGSs. Yeah, like that. That's the future right there. Where were we? We like tangented off onto smoked meats. Like,
I don't know. I mean, do we have any more etiquette topics to talk about, or? I mean, we covered a lot of things. I'm sure there's stuff like, honestly, most of it's common sense. Don't be the sort of person who has a reputation. Like, people remember, and people tell other people. Like, I know some people in the community who have less than stellar reputations already. So, I mean, just don't.
in the Lorcana scene, or
Absolutely,
are they
yeah.
reputations that have come over from their previous game?
There's both, but you know, it's just don't be that guy is my advice. And it's not that hard. It's really not. Like, if you're kind, courteous, and at least just try, you know. Obviously, we've all had moments of weakness. Certainly when I was younger, obviously playing competitive Magic, you know, I'm sure I had less than stellar moments that I'm not proud of, but yeah.
The TCG player history has been fairly toxic and not great. Hopefully it continues to get better, and it has. I would hope. It feels like it, at least in my area, it's a lot better than it was
For sure.
when I started playing card games like 20 years ago, right? Like, which is always a good thing.
And it's, you know, it's our opportunity right now to build the community we want, right? The people who have the loudest voices, you know, like us, who people are looking to get to set an example. And I think, you know, it's best to make a clear statement about what sorts of behaviors we don't want in the community early on. And, you know, ideally, tournament organizers would enforce good sportsmanship, and hopefully they do. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I think Disney Lorcana so far has been very, very friendly. Like, everyone I've met in the community seems great for the most part, with only a few minor exceptions, and I hope it continues to be that way for sure.
Yeah, I've pretty much liked everyone I've encountered. Like, I even quite enjoy Wochuck's banter in the 20 lore Discord. I like it. Like, he's obviously a cocky individual, but like, he puts up some numbers. Whether or not Pixelborn top 25 is really an accomplishment, I don't know.
You take that back. That's actually the greatest accomplishment anyone has ever achieved.
I mean, I also have been up there, and I try to every set if I can. It's going to be interesting now with hardcore and regular having to judge both. I actually think it's easier on hardcore to, like, easier is maybe the wrong word, a shorter time period. Like, I feel like if I had like a 2-day period, I could like get in the top 25 of hardcore towards the end of the season, right?
Absolutely. You just have to not lose for like 2 days.
Yeah, easy. Whereas in ladder, I could not lose for 2 days, and then like I just get passed, right? The like, it's just like a numbers game. Whereas in I just have to get that really good performance on hardcore. And like right now on hardcore, I think I'm 1430 or something, and top 25 is like 1480. It's slowly going up. But I just have to have another 9-0 spree or something. Easy peasy.
You also have to, it also matters who you get matched into, right? Because there's been many times where I've been just slowly climbing 6 elo at a time, and then I lose one game, and it just happened to be into a bad matchup, and it's like -20, and like, that just invalidates the past like 3 hours. Like, it feels so bad.
Yep.
Elo, yeah.
It's the way it is. If you get matched against someone with low rating and you lose, it is going to tank your elo.
Like, I would play Magic, and it's like you play F&M and you go 3-1 and you lose 5 points, 4 points. It's just like, how's this? It's an 8K event. How is this possible? Like, but you play for the love of the game. You're gonna lose some elo. Like, it's rough when you're doing these like short grinds for sure. Elo is definitely designed for a much longer period of time where it kind of stabilizes. It should be fine. At least like on your local level, if it existed, you could just slowly feed them your elo and then you wouldn't lose as many, but it doesn't work that way on Pixelborn. Like,
All right, well, are there any last minute topics we want to go over, or all good there?
I mean, we kind of talked about like the Pride lands a little bit, but maybe we can discuss the fact that it's like it is kind of the new thing to the meta right now, and decks are a little bit adjusting to it. I don't know exactly how they're going to, but they're going to have to. It's become quite popular. So for like this upcoming weekend, like I think it's gonna be on your radar. Like it, I'm not. Do not play aggro. Don't play hyper aggro this weekend. There's too much steel. There's just too much steel. Like if I tell you to play hyper aggro, play it. But
I wonder if we'll start seeing more people tech Titans into decks again, like as two ofs. There was a ton of steel decks teching Titans, and that was just for castles even. But then it seemed to fall off a little bit, so I'm not quite sure if we'll see Titans coming back to specifically handle that, or if maybe people just don't see it as that much of a threat.
I mean,
I think the bigger threat in that Steel Song deck is the going wide. So if I had to tech something, I might just up my swords count versus Titans. But
yeah, and it's a frustrating thing because the Pride lands also is good against swords. Like if they have the time to spend the extra ink to do that. The other thing is like it never feels like you don't want to spend 3 ink to destroy a 2 ink card. Like
No.
so, Rise of the Titans is not the answer to Pride lands. I don't think. Like Benj is the answer to Flute and Lantern because it gives you a 2/3 quest for 2. Like it's so good. But we don't have the Beast Relentless or the Benja for items yet. I mean, I guess you have Maui, maybe.
Beast hard-headed, not relentless.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, Beast Relentless is the combo one.
And
sure
see,
it'll
and
be
this is
something-
how deck lists get filled out wrong, people.
Yeah, true. That's what we call a callback.
I'm sure there almost has to be that sort of character in the next set, right? Like
I think
destroy
so.
a location when it enters. I just wonder how much they're going to value that. Are they going to value a location as an item and have a reasonable body like Benja with 2 or are they going to make you play a 1/1 destroy location when this enters or something? Like it's almost not worth playing the body at that point.
Maybe. Like types could matter. Like who knows? But yeah, like a 5. I would probably play a 5 ink 1/1 that destroyed an location. I don't know. It sings songs, bro. It sings songs.
Okay, maybe in Steel, maybe, but probably nowhere else for sure.
Yeah, with Whole New World.
Does it have ward? What's the other upside to this
Yeah,
thing?
I don't know. That sounds like Rise of the Titans with downside
It's a
to me.
stretch.
But yeah, I suspect that my theory pretty early on was that they left out a lot of the location removal in the hopes that locations would have a set to sort of shine. They're the new cards. I imagine that they didn't want to beat them into oblivion immediately. So I hope that we get some more ways to interact with them. Otherwise, I mean,
so for the Magic players, locations are similar-ish to Planeswalkers, right? They're not as powerful and more powerful. Like it's like a Planeswalker and an artifact mixed together, kind of. It's just like a reusable source of profit that can be attacked down, right? And when Magic first made Planeswalkers, there just wasn't targeted removal for them, basically. You had to attack them down. Eventually, Wizards discovered that you need to have cheap and good answers to locations or Planeswalkers, because otherwise they just get out of control. And it's possible that this version of that type of card, like in Lorcana, will require like a Hero's Downfall type card. And I mean, we have a Hero's Downfall, I guess, but we might require something better than that. Like just paying 3 to kill it is a little overcosted, but at the bare minimum is needed against like castles sometimes.
Yeah, I'm assuming they'll figure it out. If not this next set soon, that we'll get some more answers. Otherwise, I mean, at this point, it's not like locations aren't oppressive, so I'm not super worried about it. But I just feel like they probably had stuff waiting in the wings. They just didn't want to put it all in one set.
Well, someone who's been playing Action Jackson for like a week, locations are very oppressive.
Yes, yes, for sure. Some people, you know, I've seen some early on some blue steel and green steel aficionados who were not happy about their existence, but that's all right. They have to be good
It's
somewhere.
like, yeah. They are not bad against steel, which Castle really shines against, I think.
All right, well, want to wrap it up there? I guess I'll leave you on join the TBSD 10K. It's going to be a huge event. It'll be a ton of fun. You might get to play against one of us, and I think it'd be a really cool experience. And if you especially want some high level practice for your set championships, it's sort of the best place to be.
I do agree.
All right, well, see ya. Thanks for listening.